Real-life stories you might not know. Part 2. History is full of strange social experiments, but few are as chilling, tragic, and bizarre as the story of Hildegard Rodriguez Carballera. This is the story of a mother's obsessive ambition, a daughter's brilliance, and a social experiment that ended in unthinkable tragedy. In 1914, in Spain, a woman named Aurora Rodriguez Carballera conceived a child. But this wasn't an ordinary pregnancy. It was a project. Aurora was a feminist, a socialist, and a devoted believer in eugenics. The idea that humanity could be improved through selective breeding. She chose a man she believed was intellectually and physically superior to father her child. Her mission? To create the perfect woman of the future. She named the baby Hildegard. From the moment Hildegard was born, she wasn't raised as a child, but as a symbol, a masterpiece in the making. By age 4, Hildegard could fluently speak 4 languages. As a teenager, she was a college graduate. By 18, she was a professor, a writer, a political activist, and a rising star in Europe's intellectual circles. She wrote books, gave speeches on feminism and sexual reform, and dazzled everyone she met. But while the world admired Hildegard, her mother's mind grew darker. Aurora wasn't raising a daughter, she was molding a sculpture, a tool for her grand vision to reshape society. The more Hildegard began to develop her own ideas, the more independent she became. She made friends, fell in love, and started dreaming of a life beyond her mother's control. Even the famous writer H.G. Wells offered Hildegard a job as his personal secretary in England, hoping to help her escape her mother's suffocating grip. But Aurora's paranoia only deepened. She believed sinister forces were plotting to steal Hildegard away and corrupt her perfect creation. And then the unthinkable happened. In June of 1933, while Hildegard slept peacefully in her bed, Aurora entered the room with a gun. She fired 4 fatal shots into her own daughter, killing the very person she had built her life around. When questioned, Aurora's explanation was as cold as it was haunting. The sculptress, after discovering the most minimal imperfection in her work, destroys it. Aurora was later diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. She held grand illusions that she was destined to reform the world through eugenics, and saw Hildegard as the chosen one to lead the way. But as Hildegard claimed her independence, Aurora's mind invented conspiracies, convinced others were manipulating her daughter for evil. In her warped mind, killing Hildegard was not murder, it was necessary to save the world. She spent the rest of her life institutionalized. And so what began as an ambitious social experiment to create the perfect woman became a horrifying cautionary tale about obsession, control, and the terrible consequences of treating human beings like projects rather than people. This is one of the most bizarre and tragic social science experiments in history. A story where brilliance met madness and no one survived. Why do so-called good cops stay silent when they witness police brutality? Is it fear? Is it loyalty? Or is it because they don't want to end up like Joe Crystal? Today, I'm going to tell you a true story, one that reveals what happens when someone dares to speak up against the blue wall of silence. Joe Crystal was a good cop. No, really a good one. He'd wanted to be a police officer for as long as he could remember. It ran in the family. His father had worn the badge before him. and by 2011, Joe was a respected detective in the Baltimore Police Department. But everything changed one day when he saw something he couldn't unsee. While working a drug case, Joe witnessed two fellow officers, Mariano Gialamas and Anthony Williams, savagely beat a handcuffed suspect named Antoine Green. It wasn't a scuffle, it was a beating. They knocked Green to the ground and began kicking and punching him, breaking his ankle in the process. Crystal was horrified. He believed in justice. He believed in the badge. So he did what any good officer is supposed to do. He reported it. But when he told his sergeant, the response was chilling. Keep your mouth shut. Most people would have backed down, but not Joe. He couldn't live with the guilt. And when he saw the official police report, a carefully falsified story painting the assault as self-defense, he knew he had to act. He reached out to Assistant State's Attorney Anna Mantegna and told her everything. And that's when his life fell apart. For the next 2 years, Crystal became a marked man in his own department. Once a rising star, he was now branded a rat. He found dead rats placed on his car windshield. He was ostracized, harassed, and humiliated by the very people sworn to uphold the law alongside him. Yet, despite the threats and intimidation, Joe Crystal stood firm. He testified against his fellow officers. As a result, Anthony Williams was convicted of assault and obstruction, receiving a mere 45 days in jail. Gialamas got probation for misconduct. And the charges against Antoine Green all dropped. But for Joe Crystal, the nightmare didn't end there. The harassment never stopped. Eventually, he made the agonizing decision to leave the city he loved and the career he had dedicated his life to. In 2014, he moved to Florida and became a deputy sheriff, far away from Baltimore. He later sued the city for failing to protect him and was awarded $42,000. A small consolation for a man forced to choose between his integrity and his career. And that perhaps is why so many good cops stay quiet, because the cost of speaking out can be unbearably high. Because in a system where silence is survival, Joe Crystal paid the price for doing the right thing. In 1938, a 28-year-old kindergarten teacher named Helen Hulick walked into a Los Angeles courtroom and made history, not for what she said, but for what she wore. This is the remarkable true story of how one woman's refusal to wear a dress became a bold stand for women's rights and a public showdown against an old system desperate to keep control. It all began when Helen Hulick was called to testify as a witness in a burglary case. But when she arrived in court, she wasn't wearing what society deemed proper attire for a woman at the time. Instead of a dress, Helen wore a simple orange blouse and a pair of dark green slacks. The moment she was about to be sworn in, Judge Arthur Guerin stopped the proceedings cold. He didn't ask about the burglary. He didn't ask about the crime. He asked about her pants. "The last time you were in this court dressed as you are now," he scolded, "you drew more attention from spectators and prisoners than the legal business at hand. You were requested to return in garb acceptable to courtroom procedure." And then he did something even more outrageous. He ordered the hearing rescheduled and warned Hulick, "Come back in slacks again and you'll face jail time." The press caught wind of the incident immediately. Reporters chased after Hulick as she left the courthouse, eager for a statement. She didn't hesitate. "I've worn slacks since I was 15, she declared. "I don't even own a dress except for a formal gown. If he wants me in a formal, that's fine. But I'll be back in slacks. And if he puts me in jail, I hope it helps free women from this ridiculous anti-slackism." And true to her word, the next day, Helen returned to court, once again in her slacks. Judge Guerin was livid. He declared her in contempt of court and sentenced her to 5 days in jail, where she was forced to wear a dress made of coarse denim. But Helen's fight wasn't over. Public support poured in, and soon her case was sent to the appellate court. 4 days later, Judge Guerin's ruling was overturned. The court declared that Helen could wear whatever she pleased in the courtroom. On January 17, 1939, she returned to court one final time. Not in protest, not in defiance, but in a formal evening gown, a final graceful flourish in a battle she had already won. While the headlines faded, Helen Hulick's courage didn't stop there. She went on to pioneer a groundbreaking form of therapy for people who are deaf and founded her own nonprofit to support the community. Judge Guerin, on the other hand, passed away in 1962, remembered, if at all, as a symbol of the stubborn rules women like Helen fought to change. Her story is a reminder that sometimes it takes just one act of quiet defiance, one simple refusal to conform, to help push the world a little closer to equality. We often hear the saying, "Money can't buy happiness," but few stories illustrate that truth as clearly, or as tragically, as the story of Marcus Persson, better known as Notch, the creator of Minecraft. He built one of the most successful games in history. He made billions. He bought mansions through lavish parties and lived a life most people can only imagine. And yet, in the middle of all that, he admitted, "I've never felt more alone." It all began in 2009, when Marcus Persson introduced Minecraft, a game where players could build their own worlds, brick by pixelated brick. The game exploded in popularity. Within just 5 years, it had over 100 million players worldwide and generated more than $700 million in revenue. Then came the deal of a lifetime. In 2014, Microsoft bought Minecraft's parent company, Mojang, for a staggering $2.5 billion. At just 36 years old, Marcus Persson became an overnight billionaire. But instead of joining Microsoft, he walked away, choosing a different path, one paved with unimaginable wealth, endless freedom, and unexpected loneliness. At first, it seemed like a dream. He bought a $70 million mansion in Beverly Hills, outbidding celebrities like Jay-Z and Beyoncé, paying cash. He spent $150,000 in a single night at Las Vegas clubs. He once chartered a private jet to fly his entire staff to Monte Carlo for a 3-day party. Money was no object. But soon, the glitter faded. In a series of brutally honest tweets, Persson gave the world a glimpse of his reality. He admitted that even while partying in Ibiza surrounded by celebrities, he had never felt more isolated. Old friends in Sweden had families and responsibilities. It took hours just to get them to meet for coffee, and the darker side of having everything was slowly sinking in. When there's nothing left to chase, what's the point of running? Even romance wasn't simple. He confessed to meeting a beautiful woman, only for her to pull away after seeing his lifestyle. She chose a normal man over a billionaire, and Persson realized how fame and fortune made genuine human connection feel almost impossible. He acknowledged that his endless partying was an attempt to fill the void left from his 20s, when he spent every waking hour coding alone. Partying isn't the best way to spend money, he admitted, but it's fun. Persson's marriage to Elin Zetterstrand which began in 2011, lasted only a year, a casualty, he believed, of the overwhelming pressure that came with success. Today, he pays $6,000 a month in child support for their child. After those tweets, something unexpected happened. People reached out. Old friends, strangers, even fans. They messaged, offering to meet, to talk, to reconnect. Person, a self-described introvert, admitted it wasn't easy for him to make new friends, but he was deeply moved by the kindness of others. And in the end, just speaking his truth made a difference. Just being able to say it out loud and not having to pretend anymore, it made it easier to deal with the sadness. Marcus Person's story reminds us that while money can buy almost anything, mansions, cars, private jets, it can't buy purpose, belonging, or peace of mind. And sometimes the greatest wealth is simply knowing you're not alone. If you enjoyed this video, please give the channel a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.